Hi, my name is Victoria, and I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. My dad was in the US Air Force, so I actually moved around to a couple different cities in North Carolina and South Carolina. When I was in 5th grade, my dad got a job working in Saudi Arabia. So I actually moved for a couple of months to live with my grandparents in Virginia while all of the visas and all that got worked out. There were 2 cities that I lived in. The first city was called Khamis Mushaid, and it's in the Asir region of Saudi Arabia, which is in the southern region closest to Yemen. And then the second city that I lived in was called Dhahran, and it's in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, really close to Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. That was a mistake. I meant the UAE, not Kuwait. Let's move on. When I graduated high school, I went back to the US and I went to university at Virginia Tech, and then I moved for a year to Newark, New Jersey, and then I moved to Toronto, Canada to do my master's degree, and I've been here ever since. What does home mean to me? Probably the best description of home that I've come across recently is by this travel writer. His name is Pico Iyer, and he says that home, especially for people like us, like TCKs, is actually like a stained glass house, a collection of all of the different experiences and all of the different places and cultures that we've been or lived in put together in one house. It's less than a piece of soil and more like a piece of soul. And I personally would take it even one step further and say that for me, home is more like a feeling than anything else. I've had moments where I've felt at home in cities that I've only been in for a couple of hours, whereas there's times in Toronto where I don't feel at home at all. So for me, it is a feeling. It's something that can happen at any moment and at any place. One thing that I think is really important to keep in mind though when we're talking about home is the fact that many of us, TCKs, were extremely privileged in our experience of moving around and having different homes and in our ability to be able to even ask the question. Whereas there are millions of people out there who have been forced to leave their homes. And I think for those people, home is something more tangible because it's something that they were forced to leave behind. So I think it's really important that when we're talking about what is home, that we just keep in mind how privileged many of us are to even be asking that question in the way that we are. So I actually don't remember when I first learned the term third culture kid. I do remember that it was university when I first began to realize how different my life was and how different that then made me from a lot of the other people I was going to school with. And I distinctly remember it was the first day of orientation, and our orientation leader had us all sit in a circle to introduce ourselves. And of course, one of the big questions that they want everyone to answer is, where are you from? Which is the nightmare question for any TCK. So she's going around the group and she's asking each person, where are you from? And I start having a mild panic attack because I don't know what to say. It's my first day at school, basically at university, and I do not want to stand out. I just want to fit in. I don't want to be that weird kid. I don't want to get the weird questions. I don't want people to ask me about Saudi and if I rode camels to school or if I speak Saudi Arabian. I just didn't want to deal with it. So by the time it got to me, I think I just said that I'm technically from South Carolina. And even that was weird because almost every single person in that group was from Virginia. That was really the first time I realized that I needed to figure out how I was going to fit in here because I did have a different life, and to many people it's a very strange life. But luckily I had an amazing college roommate who was a first generation American. I think she kind of knew where I was coming from. She still thought it was kind of weird that I grew up in Saudi Arabia, but she understood the feeling of being different and not always fitting in with the rest of the crowd. So what do I struggle most with being a TCK? I think for me, it's being content. I have a really, really hard time being content in the moment, in my life, in my job, in the city I live in. I'm always looking for the next thing. I think that stems from moving around a lot and having different experiences my entire life. But as I get older and I start to, have different responsibilities, I realize that it's going to be more difficult for me to constantly be changing my life and changing jobs and changing apartments and changing cities. Something I really want to work on with myself is being comfortable settling a little bit and experiencing that. I mean, the fact that I've been in Toronto for 5 years now is mind-boggling to me and also extremely terrifying. I think that's something that I'll continue to struggle with for a really long time. So that's my story. Please share yours. It's amazing to know that there are so many TCKs out there and that there's this amazing community building. Masalama!
But that's where my heart resides in.